The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched for miles in every direction, a cathedral of glass and light floating at the center of known space. Representatives from 900 species gathered beneath its crystalline dome, their voices blending into a constant hum of diplomacy and negotiation. Ambassador Dawson stood at the human delegation's modest platform, watching the proceedings with patient eyes that had seen 3 decades of galactic politics. Humanity had joined the assembly 300 years ago, arriving as curious newcomers to a universe already ancient with civilization. The elder species had welcomed them with polite condescension, expecting the young race to follow the familiar pattern of expansion and conquest. But humans had surprised everyone. They built hospitals instead of warships. They trained diplomats instead of soldiers. They offered aid to refugee species and negotiated peace treaties between enemies who had been killing each other for. The galaxy had eventually classified humanity as a Category 7 civilization, the lowest possible threat designation. It was meant as an insult, but had always considered it an honor. Admiral Cole stood beside her, his dress uniform crisp and his silver hair neatly trimmed. He commanded the entirety of humanity's defense fleet, 43 vessels designed primarily for search and rescue operations. The ships carried weapons, of course, but they were defensive systems meant to protect relief convoys and evacuate civilians from disaster zones. Had never fired a shot in anger during his entire 40-year career. The assembly speaker, a towering creature from the hive, raised its forelimbs for silence. The hall gradually quieted as translators hummed to life across thousands of platforms. "We have received formal declaration from the Dominion," the speaker announced. "They claim sovereign rights over the Sol system and all human territories under the ancient laws of conquest." Felt stiffened beside her. There were predators in the truest sense, a species that had built their entire civilization on the subjugation of others. They had consumed 17 intelligent species in the past 10,000 years, stripping their worlds of resources and enslaving their populations. The galaxy tolerated them because the galaxy feared them. The representative slithered forward on its platform, its serpentine body gleaming with ceremonial oils. High Diplomat regarded the assembly with the cold satisfaction of a hunter who has cornered weak prey. "The human species occupies resource-rich territories that are wasted on their pacifist civilization," declared. "They have no military strength worth measuring. They have no warrior tradition worth respecting. The Dominion will bring order and purpose to their worlds." Activated her platform speaking system. "The Assembly recognizes the human delegation," the speaker announced. "The people of Earth have no interest in war," said, her voice calm and steady. "We have devoted ourselves to peace for 3 centuries. We ask the Assembly to invoke the mutual defense protocols on our behalf." Silence fell across the hall, watched as representatives exchanged glances, as diplomatic calculations played out across hundreds of alien faces. She already knew what the answer would be. The speaker shifted uncomfortably. "The mutual defense protocols require that the threatened species demonstrate meaningful defensive capabilities. Humanity's military assets are insufficient to meet this threshold. You are telling us that we must be able to fight before you will help us avoid fighting," said. "We are telling you that the Assembly cannot commit resources to defend a species that cannot defend itself. It would be sending our warriors to die for a cause that is already lost." Made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "The humans have made themselves prey. The Dominion does not negotiate with prey. We consume it." Looked around the assembly hall at the representatives who would not meet her eyes. The delegation, whose humanity had helped rebuild after a devastating plague. The collective, whose Civil War humanity had helped end through years of patient mediation. The bright ones, an energy-based species that humanity had saved from extinction by developing technology to stabilize their dying star. None of them spoke. None of them would risk the wrath of for a species that could not fight back. The Dominion fleet will arrive in human space within 30 standard cycles, announced. We will accept surrender at any point before our arrival. After that, there will be no negotiation, only harvest. The assembly session ended with humanity standing alone, and walked through the station's observation corridor in silence. Beyond the transparent walls, stars burned against the infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, 1,000 warships were already moving toward Earth. 43 ships, said quietly. We have 43 ships against 1,000. I know. Our weapons are 30 years behind theirs. Our shields cannot withstand their primary batteries. Our crews have never seen real combat. I know. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Then what do we do? How do we save our people? Looked out at the stars. She thought about Earth, about the billions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their existence had just been declared forfeit by a galaxy that had decided they were not worth saving. She thought about human history, about all the wars her species had fought against itself before they had finally chosen a different path. Do you know why humanity chose peace? She asked. Because we evolved beyond violence. Because we recognized that cooperation was more beneficial than conflict. Shook her head slowly. No, we chose peace because we remembered what we were capable of. We chose peace because the alternative terrified us. Frowned, I do not understand. You will, everyone will soon enough. She activated her communication device and connected to Earth. The face of Director Samuel appeared, his expression grave. He was the head of a facility that did not officially exist, buried beneath mountains on a continent that humans had once called North America. Director, this is Ambassador Dawson. Authorization code Prometheus 7. His eyes widened. Ambassador, that code has not been used in 300 years. I am aware. They have declared war on humanity. The Assembly has refused to help us. We have 30 cycles before their fleet arrives. There was a long pause. When spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. You want to wake them up. You want to wake us up. I want to give our people a choice, said. The same choice our ancestors made when they put themselves to sleep. They chose peace when they could have chosen war. Now we must decide whether to make that choice again or to remember what we truly are. Nodded slowly. I will begin the preparations. God help us all, Ambassador. God help the entire galaxy. Ended the transmission and turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, they were coming to harvest humanity like cattle. They thought they were hunting prey. They had no idea what they were about to awaken. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts, 1,000 warships spreading across the outer reaches of the Sol system. Commander Lisa Trent watched them arrive from the bridge of the Endurance, her fingers steady on the communication controls as she prepared the standard diplomatic greeting. Fleet, this is Commander Lisa Trent of the Earth vessel Endurance. We welcome you to human space and request peaceful dialogue regarding your intentions. The response came in the form of weapons powering up across the enemy formation. They did not negotiate with prey. Lisa turned to her crew, 40 men and women who had signed up for search and rescue operations, not combat. They looked back at her with fear in their eyes, and she could not blame them. The Endurance was a medical frigate with defensive weapons that would barely scratch armor. They were going to die out here, and everyone knew it. All ships fall back to defensive positions around Mars Colony, Lisa ordered across the fleet channel. Protect the civilian evacuation. 43 human vessels began their retreat as the fleet advanced. The enemy was in no hurry. They knew that their prey had nowhere to run. On Mars, 12 million humans lived in domed cities that spread across the red planet's surface. They had been given 3 days to evacuate, but the transport ships could only carry so many. Families crowded into terminals, desperate to escape the coming storm. Children cried while parents tried to remain calm. Elderly colonists gave up their seats so that the young might live. The first strike came without warning. A single warship broke formation and fired a bombardment cannon at the largest colony dome. The blast punched through defensive shields like paper, vaporizing 12,000 humans in an instant of blinding light. Lisa watched the colony die on her tactical display. She heard the screams coming through the communication channels before they cut to static. She felt something shift inside her mind, something ancient and vast stirring from a sleep that had lasted longer than human civilization. On Earth, Director Samuel stood in the control center of the facility that had waited 3 centuries for this moment. Banks of equipment hummed with power that had been dormant since before the first human had left the planet. Screens displayed genetic sequences that no scientist fully understood, patterns woven into human DNA that served no apparent biological purpose. "Begin the awakening sequence," ordered. A pulse of energy radiated outward from the facility, invisible to ordinary senses but felt by every human being on the planet. It spread through the solar system at faster than light speed, touching every human regardless of where they were. On ships, in colonies, on stations scattered throughout known space, humans stopped what they were doing as something fundamental changed inside them. Dr. Grant monitored the process from his laboratory, watching as brain activity patterns shifted across billions of subjects simultaneously. Neural pathways that had been dormant since birth suddenly activated. Memory centers lit up with activity that should not have been possible, recalling events that the conscious mind had never experienced. "What is happening to them?" his assistant asked, her voice trembling. "They are remembering," said. "They are remembering what they were before they chose to forget." On the Endurance, Lisa Trent collapsed against her command chair as memories flooded her mind. She saw battles fought across galaxies that no longer existed. She felt the weight of weapons that could crack planets in half. She remembered enemies that made the look like insects, cosmic horrors that had threatened the very fabric of reality itself. She remembered victory. She remembered the taste of it, the intoxicating power of absolute dominance. She remembered why her ancestors had eventually turned away from that path, choosing to bury themselves in mortal flesh and forget their true nature. They had grown tired of being gods of war. They had wanted to experience something else, something gentler, something kinder. But they had never truly died. They had only slept. Lisa opened her eyes and her crew gasped at what they saw. Her irises had turned gold, ancient and terrible, filled with the weight of eternities. She looked at the tactical display and saw the fleet not as a threat but as a minor inconvenience. "Commander," her first officer whispered, "what is happening to you?" "I am remembering who I am," Lisa said. Her voice had changed, carrying harmonics that made the bulkheads vibrate. "I am remembering who we all are." Across the human fleet, similar transformations were taking place. Ordinary people who had never held a weapon suddenly understood combat tactics that predated the universe itself. Engineers began sketching designs for technology that violated every known law of physics. Strategists predicted enemy movements with perfect accuracy because they had fought wars across dimensions that they could not imagine. The Galactic Assembly received reports that made no sense. Human ships were reconfiguring themselves, their hulls shifting and changing as crews implemented modifications that should have taken years in a matter of hours. Energy signatures were appearing that matched no known technology. Communication intercepts revealed humans speaking in languages that predated all recorded history. Ambassador Dawson addressed the assembly one final time, her eyes now burning with the same golden light that marked all awakened humans. "You asked why humanity chose peace," she said. "You assumed it was because we were weak, because we could not fight, because we had no warrior tradition." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You were wrong. We chose peace because we remembered war. We remembered it perfectly, completely, across billions of years and countless incarnations. We did not evolve on Earth. We placed ourselves there. We locked away our true nature and chose to be mortal because we were tired of being what we were. The assembly hall had gone completely silent. 900 species watched the human ambassador with growing terror. "We were gods of war," said. "We ended civilizations, we extinguished stars. We fought battles that shaped the very structure of reality, and we grew sick of it. We wanted to experience something else. Compassion, kindness, love, the simple joy of helping others without any thought of conquest or domination." She turned to face the delegation, where High Diplomat had gone very still. "Your people have awakened us. You have forced us to remember what we truly are. We did not want this. We chose peace for 300 years, and we would have chosen it for 300 more." Her golden eyes blazed with light that hurt to look upon. "But you killed 12,000 of our children. You came to harvest us like cattle. You gave us no choice but to wake up." Dawson smiled, and it was the smile of something ancient and terrible wearing a human face. "Now you will see what humanity truly is, and may whatever gods you pray to have mercy on your souls." Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Meridian, and tried to make sense of what he had become. Memories cascaded through his mind like waterfalls of fire, each one carrying the weight of battles fought before the first stars had been born. He remembered commanding fleets that numbered in the millions. He remembered weapons that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. He remembered enemies so vast and terrible that entire galaxies had trembled at their approach. And he remembered victory, always victory. The transformation had taken 72 hours. For 3 days, humanity had gone silent as billions of people processed memories that should have driven them mad. Some had screamed. Some had wept. Some had simply sat in stunned silence as they absorbed the truth of what they were. They were not a young species stumbling through the cosmos. They were ancient beyond measure, beings of such power that they had grown bored with godhood and chosen mortality as an escape from the endless cycle of war. They had buried themselves in flesh, locked away their memories, and spent 300,000 years learning how to be human. Now they remembered everything. Looked at his tactical display and saw the fleet holding position near Mars, uncertain of what to do. They had expected a quick conquest, a simple harvest of a defenseless species. Instead, they had watched the human fleet go dark for 3 days and emerge transformed. "Admiral, the fleet awaits your orders," his first officer said. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Park had been a logistics specialist 3 days ago. Now she moved with the fluid grace of a warrior who had fought in 10,000 battles, her eyes carrying the same golden light that marked all awakened humans. "Status of the fleet modifications?" asked. "Complete, sir. All ships have been retrofitted with primary weapon systems. Shields have been upgraded to specifications that our engineering teams did not know they knew. Drive systems have been enhanced to exceed anything they possess." Nodded slowly. The knowledge had simply been there when the awakening came, buried in genetic memory that human scientists had dismissed as junk DNA for centuries. They had not evolved these capabilities. They had always possessed them, sleeping inside their cells, waiting for the moment when they would be needed again. On the flagship, High Commander studied the human fleet with growing unease. His sensors were reporting energy signatures that made no sense. Human ships that had been helpless 3 days ago now radiated power that exceeded his own dreadnoughts. Their weapons systems had appeared from nowhere, configurations that matched nothing in any database. "What are they?" demanded of his science officers. "Unknown, High Commander. Their technology appears to be based on principles we do not understand. Some of their systems seem to violate the fundamental laws of physics as we know them." Had been a warrior for 2 centuries. He had conquered 17 worlds and enslaved millions of sentient beings. He had never known fear in his entire life. He felt it now. "Open communication channel to the human fleet," he ordered. The face that appeared on his display was that of an elderly human female, the one called Ambassador Dawson. But her eyes were no longer the soft brown they had been. They burned with golden fire, ancient and merciless. "High Commander," said, "you have one opportunity to withdraw your forces from human space. Take it." "You cannot threaten the Dominion," replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We have conquered species far more powerful than yours." "No, you have not." The communication ended. Stared at the blank screen, his scales rippling with involuntary fear responses. "All ships, battle formation," he ordered. "We will crush these humans and prove that the Dominion fears nothing." The fleet began to advance. 1,000 warships moved toward the 43 human vessels in a formation designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Their weapons powered up, targeting systems locked onto the tiny human ships. Admiral Cole watched them come without fear. He could feel the battle awareness that had once made him a god of war, the instinctive understanding of combat that transcended mere tactics. He knew exactly what they would do before they did it. He knew exactly how to counter every move they would make. "All ships, execute maneuver pattern Alpha 7, he ordered. The human fleet moved. It appeared as though the 43 ships had read their minds, flowing through gaps in their formation before they had even formed. Human weapons fired with precision that should have been impossible, each shot striking exactly where it would do the most damage. The first warship exploded in a bloom of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Petty Officer Danny sat at his weapons console on the Endurance, his hands moving with a speed and accuracy that his conscious mind could not follow. 3 days ago, he had been a communications specialist who had never fired anything more dangerous than a training simulator. Now he was destroying enemy ships with casual efficiency, each shot guided by memories of battles fought in galaxies that had died before Earth existed. "Target acquired," he said calmly, firing. Another ship died. Danny felt the weight of his awakened memories pressing against his consciousness. He remembered wars that had lasted longer than the current universe had existed. He remembered enemies that had made the look like children playing with sticks. He remembered victory after victory after victory, an endless parade of conquest that had eventually left him hollow and empty. He understood now why his ancestors had chosen to sleep. The glory of war faded. The thrill of victory turned to ash. In the end, they had wanted something more than dominion. They had wanted peace. But they had not given them a choice. Commander Lisa Trent led the assault on the enemy flagship, her ship dancing through defensive fire with moves that seemed to anticipate every shot. Her crew worked in perfect harmony, each person's awakened instincts complementing the others in a symphony of destruction. "We are not what we were," she said quietly, watching enemy ships burn. "We chose to be human. We chose kindness and compassion and love. We built hospitals instead of warships. We healed the wounded instead of creating more wounds." She pressed the firing control, and another enemy vessel vanished in nuclear fire. "But they would not let us stay asleep. They came to harvest our children. They came to enslave our people. They forced us to remember what we are capable of." The flagship loomed ahead, its weapons firing desperately at the approaching human vessels. None of the shots connected. The human ship seemed to know exactly where each blast would go before it was fired. Lisa opened a channel to High Commander. "This is Commander Lisa Trent of the Earth vessel Endurance. Your fleet is being destroyed. Surrender now and your surviving crews will be treated with mercy." His face appeared on her display, twisted with a combination of fury and terror. How are you doing this? You were prey. You were cattle waiting to be harvested." "We were sleeping gods trying to forget what we once were," Lisa replied. "You woke us up. This is the consequence." The battle raged for another hour, but the outcome had been decided in the first 5 minutes. Human ships moved through the formation like wolves among sheep, their weapons striking with impossible precision, while enemy fire passed harmlessly through space that human vessels had already vacated. 600 warships died before finally ordered the surrender. Not a single human vessel had been scratched. Admiral Cole received the surrender on the bridge of the Meridian, watching as the surviving ships powered down their weapons and raised the signal of defeat. He should have felt satisfaction. In his memories, he could recall the intoxicating triumph of countless victories, the surge of power that came from destroying enemies who had dared to challenge him. Instead, he felt only sadness. "We did not want this," he said quietly. "We chose peace. We chose to be better than what we were." Lieutenant Commander Park stood beside him, her golden eyes reflecting the light of burning ships. "They did not give us a choice, Admiral." "No, they did not." Turned away from the display showing the devastation they had wrought. 600 ships destroyed in 8 hours, hundreds of thousands of dead. The dormant gods had awakened, and the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "The battle is over, now the real war begins." "Sorry." "The war to decide what we want to become," said. "Whether we stay awake or choose to sleep again, whether we embrace what we truly are or fight to remain what we chose to be." He looked at his hands, remembering all the worlds those hands had destroyed across eternities of warfare. "That choice will be harder than any battle we have ever fought." High Commander knelt on the deck of his own flagship, surrounded by human soldiers who moved with the casual confidence of apex predators. 3 days ago, he had commanded the mightiest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. Now he was a prisoner of the species he had come to enslave. Commander Lisa Trent stood before him, her golden eyes regarding him with an expression that was neither angry nor cruel. It was simply tired, the weariness of someone who had done something terrible because they had no other choice. "You will be returned to space," she said. "Your surviving ships will be permitted to leave. We have no interest in conquest or revenge." Looked up at her with confusion and fear. "You destroyed 600 warships. You killed hundreds of thousands of my people, and you will simply let us go?" "Yes." "Why? In your position, the Dominion would have pressed the advantage. We would have pursued your broken fleet to your and burned it to ash." Lisa was silent for a moment. In her mind, memories swirled of civilizations she had ended, of worlds she had shattered, of species she had driven to extinction. She remembered the hollow satisfaction of absolute victory, the empty throne of dominion over the dead. "Because that path leads nowhere we want to go," she finally said. "We have walked it before. We have conquered and destroyed and ruled over the ashes of our enemies. It brought us nothing but emptiness." She turned away from the nailing commander. "Take him to the transport. Make sure his people are treated with dignity." The human soldiers escorted away, leaving Lisa alone on the command deck of the captured flagship. She walked to the main viewport and looked out at the field of debris that had once been the invasion fleet. Twisted metal and frozen bodies drifted through space, the remains of an armada that had expected to harvest humanity like cattle. "We did this," she thought. "We who built hospitals and negotiated peace treaties. We who chose kindness for 300 years. We destroyed them without effort, without loss, without mercy." The memories pressed against her consciousness, demanding acknowledgement. She had been so many things across the eternities. A general commanding fleets that blotted out stars. A destroyer of worlds, a ender of civilizations, a god of war whose name had made galaxies tremble. She had won every battle she had ever fought, claimed every victory that was possible to claim. And in the end, she had been left with nothing but the taste of ash. That was why they had chosen to sleep. Not because they were weak, not because they were afraid, but because they had finally understood that endless victory was its own kind of defeat. There was nothing left to conquer that mattered, nothing left to destroy that would fill the void inside them. So they had made themselves mortal. They had locked away their power and their memories and chosen to experience something different. Love, loss, the simple joy of helping someone without any thought of dominion, the quiet satisfaction of building something instead of tearing it down. For 300 years, that choice had worked. Humanity had become something beautiful, a species devoted to healing and diplomacy and compassion. They had earned the respect of the galaxy not through force but through kindness. Now that was over. Lisa felt tears running down her cheeks, strange and unfamiliar. Gods did not weep, but she was trying so hard to remain human. The communication system chimed. "Commander Trent, Admiral Cole requests your presence at the Assembly Hall. The Galactic Assembly has called an emergency session." "Understood, I am on my way." The Assembly Hall was in chaos when Lisa arrived. 900 species had witnessed the impossible, had watched 43 human ships destroy 1,000 warships without taking a single casualty. Fear radiated from every delegation, the primal terror of prey confronting something far beyond their understanding. Admiral Cole stood at the human delegation's platform, his golden eyes surveying the terrified assembly with something that might have been pity. Ambassador Dawson stood beside him, her expression carefully neutral. The speaker struggled to restore order, its forelimbs clicking with agitation. "The Assembly recognizes the human delegation. We demand an explanation for what has occurred." Stepped forward. "You demanded that humanity demonstrate military capability before you would help us. We have done so. You destroyed the fleet. You demonstrated power that exceeds anything in the recorded history of this galaxy." "Yes, we did." The delegate, a being of crystalline light, flickered with anxiety. "What are you? Where did this power come from? 3 days ago your ships were toys. Now you have weapons that make them look primitive." Exchanged glances with. This was the moment they had known would come, the moment when humanity would have to reveal the truth about itself. "We were not always human," said. "Humanity, as you knew it, was a mask we chose to wear, a role we decided to play. We placed ourselves on Earth 300,000 years ago and locked away our memories because we were tired of being what we truly are." Silence fell across the hall. "We are old," continued. "Older than this galaxy, older than most of the stars you see in your skis. We fought wars that shaped the structure of reality itself. We defeated enemies that would drive your greatest warriors mad with terror. We were gods of war, and we were very, very good at it." The collective, a hive mind that spoke with one voice, managed to ask the question that hung in the air. "If you were so powerful, why did you choose to become mortal? Why did you hide yourselves?" It was who answered. "Because victory is not the same as fulfillment. Because conquest leaves you with nothing but the ashes of what you have destroyed. Because after an eternity of war, we wanted to experience something else." He looked around the assembly, at the species who had refused to help humanity when they came. "We wanted to know what it felt like to be kind without being powerful, to help others without any hope of reward, to build things instead of destroying them. We chose peace not because we could not fight, but because we remembered what fighting truly cost." Lisa stepped forward, her voice carrying across the hall. "They woke us up. They killed our children and forced us to remember what we are. We did not want this. We would have gladly remained asleep for another 1,000 years, helping you rebuild your worlds and negotiate your treaties and heal your wounded." She raised her hands, and for a moment golden light flickered around her fingers, a hint of the power that slumbered inside every human being. "But now we are awake, and we must decide what to do with what we have become." The assembly watched in terrified silence as the three humans stood before them, ordinary faces hiding something ancient and terrible. "We are not your enemies," said. "We have no interest in conquest or domination. We remember where that path leads, and we have no desire to walk it again." "Then what do you want?" the speaker asked. smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human again. We want what we have always wanted since we chose to be mortal. We want to help. We want to heal. We want to build something beautiful instead of destroying everything we touch. She paused, her golden eyes sweeping across the assembly. But we will not be prey again. We will not allow anyone to threaten our people or murder our children. The dormant gods have awakened, and we will not be put back to sleep by force. The message was clear. Humanity remained committed to peace, but the price of attacking them had become infinite. Cole looked at the stars visible through the assembly's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, the surviving ships were limping home to deliver the news of what had happened. Soon, the entire galaxy would know what humanity truly was. The question was whether humanity would remain what they had chosen to be, or become what they had been. That battle, knew, would be fought not with weapons but with will, and it would determine the fate of not just humanity but every species in existence. 6 months had passed since the awakening, and humanity was at war with itself. Not the kind of war that could be fought with weapons. The dormant gods had remembered their power, and now they struggled with the question of what to do with it. Across Earth and throughout the colonies, humans debated their future with a passion that matched any battle in their ancient memories. Some embraced what they had become. They argued that humanity should reclaim its place as the dominant force in the universe, that 300 years of playing the peaceful species had been a mistake. Why heal the wounds of lesser civilizations when they could rule them all? Why negotiate treaties when they could simply impose their will? Others were horrified by their awakened memories. They had spent their lives as doctors and teachers and artists, building a civilization based on compassion and cooperation. The memories of godhood felt like a violation, a corruption of everything they had believed themselves to be. Dr. Grant had developed a treatment. Working in his laboratory beneath the mountains, he had found a way to suppress the awakened memories and restore humans to their dormant state. It was not erasure, but rather a return to sleep, a choice to forget the terrible power that lurked inside their cells. The treatment was offered freely to any human who wanted it. There was no judgment, no pressure. Each person could decide for themselves whether to remain awake or choose to sleep again. Admiral Cole sat in his office in the orbital station above Earth, watching the debate unfold across news feeds and social networks. His golden eyes reflected the glow of screens showing protests and counter-protests, speeches and arguments, families torn apart by the question of what humanity should become. Ambassador Dawson entered without knocking. She had lost weight over the past months, the strain of representing a species in crisis visible in the lines of her face, but her eyes still burned with the golden light of awakening. "The treatment distribution is complete," she said. "Every human who wants to return to dormancy can do so." "And how many have chosen it?" "Most of them, almost 90%. Closed his eyes. He felt relief wash through him, mixed with something that might have been grief. 90% of humanity had looked at the power they possessed and chosen to give it up. They had remembered what they were capable of and decided they did not want to be capable of it anymore. "The protests," he asked. "Subsiding. The ones who wanted to embrace godhood are a small minority. Most of them are young, awakened humans who never experienced what we were before the sleeping. They do not understand why we chose peace in the first place. They will learn, or they will choose the treatment eventually." Sat down across from him. "What about you? Will you take the treatment?" Was quiet for a long time. He thought about the battles he had fought across eternities, the civilizations he had ended, the stars he had extinguished. He thought about the hollow satisfaction of victory and the empty throne of dominion. Then he thought about the past 40 years of his mortal life. The rescue missions, the disaster relief operations, the grateful faces of refugees he had helped save, the simple joy of knowing that his existence had made the universe a slightly better place. "Yes," he said finally, "I will take it. I choose to be human." Smiled, and he saw tears in her golden eyes. "So will I." The treatment was administered in medical centers across Earth and the colonies. Humans lined up by the millions, waiting patiently for the injection that would send them back to sleep. They talked quietly among themselves, sharing stories about what they had remembered and why they had chosen to forget. A young woman named Sarah explained to the nurse administering her treatment that she had remembered being a destroyer of worlds. She had ended civilizations that had existed for millions of years, and she had felt nothing but satisfaction at the time. Now the memory made her sick. "I don't want to be that person," she said. "I want to be who I chose to be, a teacher, someone who builds things instead of destroying them." The nurse nodded and pressed the injection device against her arm. A moment later, Sarah's eyes faded from gold to their natural brown. She blinked, disoriented, and the weight of ancient memories lifted from her shoulders. "How do you feel?" the nurse asked. Sarah smiled. "Like myself again." Commander Lisa Trent was among the last to take the treatment. She had duties to complete first, responsibilities to the fleet that had transformed under her command. She oversaw the decommissioning of the weapons systems that had appeared during the awakening, watching as engineers dismantled devices that violated the laws of physics. "It seems like a waste," her first officer said. "All that power and we are throwing it away." "It is not waste," Lisa replied. "It is choice, the most important choice any being can make." When her duties were complete, she traveled to Earth and walked through the streets of the city where she had grown up. It looked the same as it always had, but she saw it with different eyes now. The parks where children played, the hospitals that healed the sick, the schools that taught the next generation to be curious and kind. This was what they had chosen when they put themselves to sleep 300,000 years ago. Not weakness, not surrender, a different kind of strength, the courage to be gentle in a universe that rewarded violence. She entered the medical center and took her place in line. Around her, other awakened humans waited their turn, some nervous, some peaceful, all making the same choice. When her turn came, she sat in the chair and let the nurse prepare the injection. "Any last thoughts?" the nurse asked. Lisa looked out the window at the blue sky of Earth, the planet her ancestors had chosen as their refuge from godhood. "Just gratitude," she said. "Gratitude that we had the chance to be something more than what we were." The injection pressed against her arm, and the ancient memories began to fade. The battles, the conquests, the endless parade of victory faded like dreams upon waking. She felt the weight of eternity lift from her shoulders. When she opened her eyes, they were brown again. The Galactic Assembly received humanity's formal declaration a week later. Ambassador Dawson, her eyes once again the soft brown they had been before the awakening, addressed the gathered representatives. "Humanity has made its choice," she said. "We have returned to dormancy. The powers we possessed during the crisis have been willingly surrendered. We are once again the species you have known for 300 years." The assembly listened in stunned silence. They had expected humanity to use its revealed power for conquest or at least for political advantage. Instead, the dormant gods had chosen to go back to sleep. "We will continue to build hospitals and negotiate treaties," continued. "We will continue to help refugee species and mediate conflicts. We have not changed who we choose to be." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But remember this. The power still sleeps within us. It will always be there waiting. We choose peace because we know what war truly means. We choose kindness because we remember what cruelty accomplishes. We are not prey. We are something far more dangerous." She smiled, and it was the gentle smile of a diplomat who had devoted her life to helping others. "We are gods who choose to be human, and that choice, made freely every single day, is our greatest victory." The assembly applauded, though many still looked uneasy. They would never see humanity the same way again. The peaceful healers and diplomats they had for centuries were something far older and more terrible than anyone had imagined. But humanity did not care how the galaxy saw them. They had made their choice. They would continue making it every day, every moment, every breath. The dormant gods slept again, and they dreamed of kindness. In a small school on the colony world of Haven, a woman named Lisa taught refugee children about the history of the galaxy. She had been a commander once, or so people told her. She did not remember it clearly. She only knew that she was happy here, helping young minds grow and learn and dream. Sometimes, when she looked at the stars, she felt something stir inside her. A whisper of ancient memory, a fragment of forgotten power. She smiled and turned back to her students. The gods could sleep a little longer. There was too much good work to be done.